Let's travel back in time. Before modern plumbing, before flushing toilets, before scented soap. Imagine waking up in the 1300s, inside a damp wooden house in a muddy village. Nature calls. But where do you go? In this video, we're diving deep, perhaps deeper than you'd like, into one of the most overlooked aspects of history, toilets. The story of human waste disposal is older than civilization itself. Ancient Mesopotamians used clay pots. The Romans engineered public latrines with flowing water beneath them. But as the Roman Empire fell, much of that sophistication was lost. The Middle Ages were messy, in more ways than one. With sanitation systems nearly non-existent, people had to rely on outhouses, chamber pots, and even castle walls. Yes, this is going to get weird. But it's also going to explain so much about how people really lived, smelled, and survived. In the past. By the end of this journey, you may never take your modern bathroom for granted again. In the Middle Ages, not everyone relieved themselves the same way. Like everything else, toilets were divided by class. For the peasants, life was rough. Most homes didn't have any dedicated space for waste. People used chamber pots, small clay, or wooden bowls, and then dumped them in the streets or rivers. In some villages, pigs were allowed to roam freely because they'd eat the waste. For the rich, it was a little more refined, but not by modern standards. In castles and noble estates, there were garderobes, small rooms built into outer walls, with holes cut in stone benches. Waste would fall straight down into the moat or a pit. Some garderobes were multi-level, shared by multiple floors. Knights, nobles, and even royalty sat on cold stone seats, their waste dropping onto whatever lay below. And believe it or not, moats weren't just for defense. They were often full of, you guessed it. It's easy to laugh at medieval toilets until you realize just how deadly they were. Open sewage flowed through city streets. Chamber pots were emptied into alleyways. Human waste mixed with animal droppings, blood from butcher shops, and rotting food. This cocktail of filth was perfect for one thing: disease, the Black Death, which wiped out over 25 million people in Europe, spread through fleas on rats, but the unsanitary conditions of medieval cities made it unstoppable. People didn't understand germs. Many believed diseases were caused by bad air or a curse from God. So instead of cleaning their streets, they burned incense or carried flowers to purify the air. Toilets were rarely cleaned. Some garderobes had waste pits that weren't emptied for decades. The buildup of filth not only spread disease, it also attracted rats, flies, and other pests. Not in some cases. The gas buildup inside waste pits became so toxic that it caused explosions. Yes, explosions of human waste. In short, the bathroom. You might think going to the toilet was a private act. In the Middle Ages, not always. In fact, public defecation wasn't unusual. In cities, people relieved themselves behind corners, under stairwells, or beside rivers, often in plain sight. In castles, some garderobes had multiple holes side by side, shared like public restrooms. Privacy was a luxury. Even within homes, chamber pots were often used in the same room as family members. It wasn't seen as shameful. It was just normal. That side, there were rules. For example, in monasteries, monks had designated times to use the latrine. Silence was required, and often a supervisor watched to ensure order. Some places enforced toilet laws, especially in crowded cities. You could be fined for emptying a chamber pot out the window without warning. There was even etiquette. Some people carried perfumed cloths to cover their nose while going. Nobles sometimes decorated their garderobes with tapestries to make them seem more elegant. In a world where waste was everywhere, dignity took creativity. Toilets came in many shapes and styles, some clever, some downright absurd. In peasant homes, the chamber pot was often just a wooden bucket with a lid. Some were shaped like chairs, literally close stools with a hole in the seat. Castles had garderobe towers, vertical shafts running through multiple floors. Waste would fall down into pits or rivers below. In monasteries, toilets were part of the architecture. Long benches over water channels, designed for dozens to use at once. There were even portable toilets. Nobles traveling long distances would carry close stools in carriages, sometimes with servants assisting them. The most bizarre design? Some castles had toilets that stuck out over cliffs, so waste would fall directly into rivers or ravines. All this with no flush, no plumbing, and very little cleaning. Yet, for the time, these were high-tech solutions. We've come a long way, from chamber pots to smart toilets, from sewage in the streets to underground sanitation systems. Today's standards are built on centuries of trial and, often, disgusting error. Yet even now, over 3.5 billion people in the world lack access to basic sanitation. In many rural areas, practices from the medieval world are still alive. And think, how many of us flush without even looking? How many take hand soap for granted? Public toilets today are private, well-lit, and mostly clean. But even now, cultural norms vary. In some countries, water is preferred over paper. In others, shoes are removed before entering a bathroom. What's universal, though, is the need for dignity, something that medieval people often lacked, but still tried to find. By looking back, we appreciate how far we've come, and how much farther we still have to go. In the medieval world, cleanliness was not just overlooked, it was often feared. Many people believed that bathing opened the pores and made the body vulnerable to disease. Physicians of the time warned that hot baths could allow miasmas, bad air, to seep into the skin, leading to plague or death. This led many to avoid washing altogether for months or even years. Instead of baths, people used perfumes, scented herbs, or simply covered the smell with more clothes. Wealthy nobles might own a perfumed pomander ball they carried everywhere to mask the stench. Streets reeked of human and animal waste, and chamber pots were often emptied directly onto the road. Tooth hygiene was even more mysterious. People chewed on herbs or rubbed their teeth with ashes or cloth, but dental health was still terrible. Rotting teeth, bleeding gums, and horrific breath were common, even among the wealthy. Some believed worm-like creatures lived inside teeth and caused pain. Tooth forms were a widely accepted explanation for cavities. Public bathhouses did exist, especially in cities, and were sometimes used as places for both hygiene and illicit activity. By the 15th century, bathhouses in many regions were shut down not for health reasons, but for their association with sin. In today's world, using the bathroom is a private and discreet affair. But in the Middle Ages, toilet habits were far less private, sometimes even communal. Public defecation was not uncommon. People would relieve themselves behind walls, in alleyways, or along riverbanks, often in plain sight. In crowded cities, the streets themselves sometimes acted as open sewers. Inside castles, some garderobes had multiple holes side by side, essentially acting like medieval public restrooms. Nobles might sit next to each other and chat while taking care of business. Privacy was a luxury they rarely enjoyed. Monasteries had strict rules. Monks used latrines at set times, in silence, sometimes supervised by a prior to maintain order and decorum. There were even early toilet laws. For example, it was illegal in some towns to empty chamber pots out the windows without warning, lest unsuspecting passers-by be splashed. The use of scented cloths and perfumed accessories was common to mask unpleasant odors, and nobles would decorate their garderobes with tapestries to make them feel less austere. Even in such unhygienic conditions, people sought dignity and etiquette around such an essential, yet awkward, part of life. The design of toilets in the Middle Ages varied wildly, from simple pots to architectural feats. Peasants often used chamber pots, simple wooden or clay containers, sometimes shaped like chairs, called close stools. These were portable and could be emptied when needed. Castles featured garderobes, small rooms built into the walls with a hole in a stone bench. Waste dropped straight down into pits or moats below. Some garderobes were built vertically, stacked across multiple floors in guardrobe towers. Monasteries had communal latrines, long stone benches with holes placed over running water or pits, allowing several monks to use them simultaneously. Traveling nobles carried portable toilets, and their servants would assist during long journeys. Strangest designs included toilets built on the edges of cliffs or over rivers, allowing waste to be washed away by nature. Despite their crudeness, these inventions were practical solutions given the time and technology. Today, we take modern toilets for granted. Flush systems, clean plumbing, and private bathrooms are the norm in many parts of the world. But the reality is sobering. Over 3.5 billion people still lack access to safe sanitation. Some rural and impoverished areas still rely on practices similar to those of medieval times. Cultural differences also influence toilet habits, from using water instead of paper to removing shoes before entering bathrooms. Looking back, medieval sanitation may seem primitive and disgusting, but it was a step in the long journey toward modern hygiene. Understanding the struggles and innovations of the past helps us appreciate what we have today and reminds us how much work remains to be done to provide everyone with clean, safe bathrooms.